Hey, today I want to talk about tech news. I want to talk about how Hamburg's moving to an open source system and away from Microsoft. How you can produce music in Excel. Yeah, believe it or not, you can do that. Jetbrains' new survey about the developer ecosystem. How Microsoft are moving away from C++ and over to Rust, which is great news for me. I love Rust. And we're going to talk a little bit about GPT-3, language model from OpenAI. So Hamburg recently decided to move to open source and away from Microsoft. They'll be doing this for all their, civic departments. And they're trying to mimic what Munich did recently, where they moved away from Microsoft and Microsoft Office 365 over to a system called Linux, which runs on Linux. Now that's Linux with an M, and then it runs on Linux with an N. The reason for this is, they say, is for digital sovereignty, and I think in general it's a good move anyways. It's not good to rely on proprietary software, especially for government type of business. They will also be making all the open source code available, so people will there'll be an extra level of transparency in the governance of hopefully Hamburg and Munich. Now they're aware other states have done this already in Germany, so they're not looking to reinvent the wheel, and they'll be working closely with other places. You can read more about this on zdnet.com. I personally think this is a great move, both for the open source community and for Hamburg itself. It's not set in stone yet, so it hasn't been passed into law, but it looks like it's going to pass and be successful. Now, something really fun I want to talk about is in Excel. A YouTuber by the name of Dylan Tall has created a new DAW in Excel. Now, as crazy as it might sound, it's actually pretty good. I'm excited about this because I'm big into Ableton and producing music. So to be able to do this in Excel is just a lot of fun because, you're stuck on a conference or going on a business trip. You don't have your home laptop. If you want to make some music, just open up Excel and start, mixing it up. It also gives a feature where you can export what you've created to Ableton with just a simple click of a button. To check out more about this, just go to Dylan Tall's channel. I'll leave a link in the description. JetBrains just came out with a survey about developer ecosystem. Now it has some interesting facts in here. Now there's a lot to talk about. You could talk about how JavaScript is still the biggest language out there. It seems like most people are using JetBrains for web development. But for me personally, what I wanted to look at mostly is Rust, because that's the language I'm learning. Now it's interesting to see that Rust is eating away from a big chunk of Go's user base. 17% seem to be shifting over to Rust, and a little bit away from C++ as well. Now, if we look into the Rust stats, we can see that the biggest thing that sticks out to me is a lot of people are using print line for their debugging. And I'm hoping that with time this develops to maybe a better system for debugging. The biggest downfall is right now you have to use the Ultimate Edition of IntelliJ to actually get a proper debugger working in Rust. So hopefully in time a new debugger will be developed where we can, not have to rely on print line all the time. We can also see that Rust is actually mostly used as a hobbyist language at the moment, but 80% of its users only picked it up in the past 6 months. Now that may sound like, it's only, one of these forgotten languages that people do for fun, but in my mind, this is a sign of its sharp growth that it's going through. If most of its users are new, that means it must be growing. And especially when you see that it's eating away from the Go language as well. Another interesting fact is a lot of people seem to use JavaScript alongside Rust. I think this might have a lot to do with WebAssembly, which allows you to run Rust in the browser, and it adds extreme efficiency and speed alongside JavaScript. And to be honest, I can see this is where Rust's little niche might start to fill and where it'll be used the most, but we'll see what happens. There's a lot more that we can take away from this article, but I'll let you guys look through it yourselves and see what you think. Comment below what the most interesting part of this was for you. Moving on, an article from newsstack.io had an interview with Ryan Levick of Microsoft, and he was saying that Microsoft will be moving entirely away from C++ and over to Rust for future development. This will be over a period of time. This is true. This is big news for Rust. He argues that just C++ just isn't safe enough for development. And for what they use C++ for, Rust seems to do just as good a job. I'm really excited about this because this might be the push that really puts Rust into the mainstream and brings it to the attention of more companies. In my personal opinion, I think C++ just isn't realistic for a lot of engineers. It's just a lot to take on and a lot to pay attention to. And with the sharp deadlines that we all have in programming, I think it's just you're better off using Rust. You don't have to worry about a lot of these memory safety issues and so on that you'll have in C++. So I'm really excited about this news. Finally, I want to talk about GPT-3. It's a new language model from OpenAI, and it basically is trained on 500 billion words taken from the internet. And it generates 175 billion parameters. That's crazy. You only have to train the model once, and it requires minimal user tweaking to get it to work as you want. Now, OpenAI will be releasing an API for it, and I don't think it will be available completely open source. They're afraid of what people might actually use it for, so they're just making the API available. And how this is going to work in the future, I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely something to look out for. To give you an example of its power, you can give it a sentence on a particular topic and it will come back with an entire essay completed. They did a survey on this actually to see how convincing were its essays, and 50% to 80% of people were convinced by the essays, depending on the particular essay. The worst case scenario is 50% of people believed it was human. And then the best case scenario is like 88% of people believed it was a human who wrote it. Think of all the students who just put in a sentence in their essay and it comes back with just a complete essay for you on a certain topic. Amazing part is the natural language that people are convinced this is a real person. Now you could use this for bots, AI, and now you could use this for a lot of different applications. You could probably use it heavily in the area of chatbots. I mean, maybe at this stage we can actually have interesting conversations with chatbots. Who knows? So that's it for today. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I hope to do more of these in the future. I find it fun to talk about this kind of thing. And if you have any comments on what we spoke about, leave them below. Thanks. See you next time.